the light shines out through our wounds, right? So the wounds are where we start shining brightly. And I see how now the light is shining through it. I want to learn how to come to the other side, to let my own light in through my wound and then be able to shine it back out at the world.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, it is my honor to welcome our guests. I know they're coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive. Time, 24 hours. What a precious commodity has been offered to all of us here on this planet. Now, what you do with that 24 hours will tell me a lot about you. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It deposited some things within Morgan, and we want it. We want access to it. We want to get into that stuff. We want to learn from her because why? As she shares her journey, we call it, she is going to allow herself to become vulnerable. So we want to honor that. And I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you so much for having me here.
It's an honor. And this question, I love throwing it. I really do. I love this question so much that I've tossed it to everyone. It's just a simple question. And it's in relations to the second aspect of your journey, the main post, as I said to people, that of a servant. My question to you, Morgan, is this. How do you serve mankind?
Well, that's a wonderful question. And if I really go big picture with it, right, because it can be broken down into daily moments, but as an artist and a spiritual coach and all of the roles that I play on this earth, I believe that I'm here to help remind myself and others of the love and beauty within and all around.
Yeah, it is one of the laws. It is the main law in the other realm, in that spiritual realm within the journey. In the natural realm, we have laws. And one of the laws that we look at, here's this group of people. It makes me laugh every time I think about it, Morgan. The most imperfection. None of us are perfect in any way yet. We judge each other like we're some crazy people. And it's really sad that here you have all this, the world is full of imperfection, and yet we're judging people. I don't know what kind of madness that is. As our custom here at Threads of Enlightenment, Morgan, is to go back into, I call it the beginnings of our beginnings, the first location that you and I hang out for a little while, usually 18 years or so, is that family, it is called. And in this family, we have a group of scientists that call Mom and Dad, and they're going to do some experiments on you and I. But in this location right here, we're going to learn our communication skills. We're going to become familiar with beliefs. We're going to start developing beliefs right there. We're going to also develop our patterns of behaviors right there. Another thing that we're going to start getting or obtaining within our being is those limited mindsets that are planted in us while we are there. What was your family unit like?
Well, for me, my biggest self-limiting belief that was developed during my first 18 years would be a sense of not enoughness, always pursuing ways to achieve. And I had a sense of, someone said once that it's like being on a ladder rather than being on a plane, right? Where there's always someone above and there's always someone below, and a comparison mindset, competitive mindset. And those were survival skills that I learned because of generational patterns passed down to me to prove myself worthy of the love and acceptance of my parents and the messaging from my surroundings, right? The education system, my family, my friends, the society that I live in, right? So there are all of these expectations. And so I thought there was this recipe that I needed to follow to have the best life that I thought was the way to be in the world. All of the messaging that we receive, the Cinderella story, all of the things, and the success stories, right? And as a woman, also the mothering story. And so all of these external achievements seemed like the way to heal the hole in my soul, right?
Yeah.
That inner longing to be enough, to be worthy, to be whole. And a lot of that had to do with being good in school, finding someone to love me, getting into a good college, finding the job, becoming a mother, all of those milestones. And then as I reached various ones throughout my development, none of them filled that hole in my soul. None of them actually made me feel enough. In fact, the universe was like, nope, this isn't going to do it. This isn't going to do it. And finally, it got to the point where, the dark night of the soul. But yeah, those first 18 years really set me up for a pattern of people pleasing, never being enough for myself or the external world. And the external world is a perfect mirror of my
Yeah.
inner ego, right? And so it kept showing me, no, you're not enough, because I had to find it within. I just didn't know that's what I needed to do at the time.
Yeah, most of us, the teachings on this plane, until you get into the journey, doesn't mention that at all, because this particular plane is not interested in that, because it wants you to be a certain way so that you can be plugged into the system and produce a certain thing, because the programmers are saying that we are born, we go to church, we go to high school, we go to college, we find a job, you find your husband or your mate, and you get a good family, 2.5, the house, the white picket fence with the house, a couple of vacations. They allow you 2 weeks per year or so forth. And then you grow old and die. So that is the program that they are selling to us. And many people have bought into it. But then they have those rebels that, as I said, not a part of normal, that it doesn't matter how much achievement you have. It is not the language of the currency of the soul. And so no matter how much you achieve, it will never satisfy the soul, because it's not the currency of the soul. So it means nothing. You can be a multimillionaire and still die, commit suicide, because that's not the language of the soul. So here you are. Talk to me about your communication skills. We talked about this, as we mentioned earlier. How were you with all of this piling on, as they say? What was your communication skills, like towards outsiders from your family and from you? How were you showing up, as they say?
Oh, yeah. No, it was not pretty. I remember when I first started my spiritual journey, one of the authors that I gravitated to in the beginning was Carolyn Mace, and she talks about archetypes. And when she was talking about the vampire, some part of me was like, no, I don't like that, right? But there's a little part of me that thought maybe I should pay attention to the fact that I don't like it. And when I really sat with it, the vampire archetype is one that feeds off of people around them, right?
Yeah.
And so I asked myself, in what ways had I been tapping into everyone around me for what I needed to thrive and survive and feel whole? And the more I became honest with myself, I realized that because I didn't have that tap into my own heart and power and empowerment and love, right? And the spiritual connection of love and wholeness, I was constantly looking to external validation. So if someone came into my life who reflected back at me my light, I took as much as I could get. It was a constant pursuit of romantic love, especially. That resonated with me more than friend love. So there was this deep longing to find someone to complete me, right? And I didn't think there was anything wrong with that, because all of the rom-coms and the fairy tales and everything pointed towards, yes, find someone who will love and protect and honor and care for you and support you and all of those things, right? Like as if one person could be all of
Yeah.
those things. But that's what I was under the impression of. And so I really just sucked people dry. And that's exhausting for other people. And all of my expectations of myself and others were, the word heavy is coming to mind, right? Like I just burdened others with my expectations of them and myself, and my inner perfectionist projected onto others as well. So that
Yeah.
ended up with criticism and judgment of self and others. And I lived in a space of victimhood. So my communication skills oftentimes with people, especially who would listen to my stories, were complaints. It was blaming. I was looking outside of myself for what I thought I needed to feel whole. And then I was also blaming everything outside of myself for not making me whole. And I was an oversharer of my victimhood. And now, right, you talked about service earlier. And I think that now I take that ability to be open and vulnerable and share my light, right? Share the story of darkness to light, from the wound to the healing. And, there's is it the Rumi saying that says the wound is where the light enters? Well, I also believe that once we fill ourselves with the light and we start tapping into the light that's already within us, the light shines out through our wounds, right?
Yeah.
So the wounds are where we start shining brightly, and how other people say, oh, I recognize that wound. And I see how now the light is shining through it. I want to learn how to come to the other side, to let my own light in through my wound and then be able to shine it back out at the world. I know now as well, through my ayahuasca retreat at first, that was the first time that I really realized this, that the external validation that I was looking for was associated with the fact that I had been gaslighting myself my entire childhood and adult life. So I was not validating my own experiences. I was not believing my own reality. When my body said, this is not okay, or I am angry, or what this other person did does not feel good and I do not like it and I do not want this in my life, I didn't believe myself. I was like, no, this can't be, right? Because I'm following the rules, the
Yeah.
normal that I'm supposed to be. So once I realized that I had learned to gas myself at 2 years old from a personal incident, which I saw in my ayahuasca, saw that pattern falling through my whole life of gaslighting myself, being gaslighted externally, choosing romantic partners who, if I didn't do it for myself and I actually found the empowerment to stand up for myself and say, no, I don't like the way you're treating me. No, I found people to gaslight me for me. That crescendoed, that heaviness increased until it was just so heavy. I nearly died from cancer, and life became very, very dark for me and very heavy. And that is when I finally sought out a way to free myself from that suffering. And that was the first time that I experienced psilocybin. And that cracked me open in a way that I had never experienced in my
How
life,
old were
because I
you,
had always,
Morgan?
sorry?
How old were you when that happened?
I think I was 40. Yeah. I believe it was in 21. And in all the ways, because I had gone to Al-Anon
Hmm.
for family and friends of alcoholics in my early 20s. And I had heard the messages. I had heard, let go, let God, you didn't cause it, you can't cure it, like all of the things. But I wasn't ready. I was still so attached to my conditioning. So even though I had gone to meditation classes, I had been exposed to all of the things, my soul was like, nope. You're not ready for this. This needs to get way worse before you're ready to actually attach to these new paradigm shifts, right? And so when I was 40, even though I had all of the concepts mentally, right?
Yeah.
It was in my head. I could intellectualize the
Hmm.
concepts of self-love and self-forgiveness and all of the things, although I thought forgiveness was completely outside of the realm of possibilities for me because I was so stuck in my victimhood that my ego found its worth in all of the things that had happened to me. And in the psilocybin experience, for the first time, it came out of my head and out of the conceptual and the intellectualized concept of healing and self-development into my body. And
Yeah.
for the first time, I actually felt love, not the love of another person, but the love of God. And the message was, if you can let go of your guilt and shame, you can become light and love. And I was overwhelmed. And I remember crying and saying out loud, I have so much love to give. I have so much love to give. And it was a shift from that vampiring of I need so much love to I have so much love to share. And I wasn't living a life where that was possible. So I made big changes in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story, and that shift that takes place. And all of us, we dabble. I call it dabbling. We dabble with meditation, we dabble with this, we dabble with that. And as you said, I call it the lab and the theory. And it's just like school. You study, you have the lab. I mean, the theory in the books, you go and you read it and it's hanging around here. But until you walk into the lab, and some of us, the lab is life. That when the crashing, I tell people life, to me, reminds me of Bolero. It's just this quiet, and then it crescendo into this beautiful cymbal crashing, and you're burning all over the place because you had negate to really investigate the warnings that were given to you. And we call those warnings red flags that are just all over the place. And because, we know how to do it until we burn out. And then when we crash and burn, we realize that no. And usually the first stage at revelation that we talk about, because it is the first law that you must become familiar with in the realm of the spiritual and the realm of the journey, and that is love. And everyone calls it self-love and so forth. The first space where you must occupy is that space, because it is some place where you begin to look at self and you begin to face self, and no one is a better critic about you than you. And you have to fall in love with this beautiful monster that is you. And so you have to look at this thing and all the buildup of nonsense that you have been talking to yourself. You have to look at that and love that. And when you love that, then when you say, and I tell people that say to me, I love you, I ask them, I want the ones that have gone through, Morgan, that gone through the dark period and love themselves. When they say to me, I love you, that stuff is real. Other people, I'm like, yeah, thank you so much. But when someone has gone through the journey, why? Because they have a foundation of what it means. They are familiar with it personally. So when they say it, it's an offering that they are giving to you that is so deep, is absolutely precious, other than someone just saying, I love you, because they don't understand the cost of that. So here you are. You went in and you began to see the cost and you began to love self. What was some of those things that you began to see? Because we all see those things that we took and became habits. And what were some of those things that you saw within yourself, Morgan, that you had to relinquish through? And what tools did you bring into your life to help you relinquish those beliefs that you had, the old ones, the mean, nasty ones that you had to let go of, to accept this new paradigm that you are love and you are, ought to be love, like how you see yourself?
Yes, I think I was exposed to Byron Katie before I had that transformative experience with plant medicine, and it did not resonate. And Byron Katie wrote a book called Loving What Is, and she has a system and like online worksheets that are for free, and they're for adults and for children. She has different worksheets, but it's about looking at our judgments and our beliefs and doing the self-inquiry. And before I got in touch with that self-love, I rejected it because I was very attached to my victimhood. But once I started doing the work and looking at myself with honesty and the new intention to take my spiritual path, my judgments were constant, and it relates back to that not enoughness that I felt within myself. I projected that onto the outside world. So looking at my judgments helped free me from a lot of my suffering. And the shorthand for it a lot of times can be, when have I done that? So if someone cuts me off in traffic and I'm angry, I can ask myself, when have I done that? And then there's a sense of compassion, right? Because I can put myself in their shoes. I know that when I did it in the past, let's say, I am sure that I felt fully justified in whatever was going on. I was in a hurry. My
Yeah.
children were driving me crazy. It was an accident. It was truly a mistake. Whatever was happening in my life, it was never personal. I wasn't like, Bob in the other car needs to be cut off because I really want to make him mad today. No, I'm just like living my own oblivious autopilot life, triggering everyone around me. And so is everyone else. And it's
Yeah.
never personal. So when I started looking at that and depersonalizing things and asking myself, they should, noticing when I say they should this, they should that, and I ask myself, is it true? How do I feel when I feel that way? Well, I feel pretty awful
Yeah.
and mad or sad or scared. And then I'm like, well, what if I didn't have that thought? Well, okay, I would feel free and happy and peaceful. And then what are the turnarounds? And I Byron Katie leads you through all those questions. And then the turnarounds now, after a lot of practice, I go straight to the turnaround and I ask
Yeah.
myself, okay, life is a mirror. What am I learning about myself, right? If I'm at a party and someone's complaining and blaming and in real lots of negativity and I find it triggering, right? And I want to escape because I'm like, this is so annoying. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, Morgan, what buttons is this pushing within myself? Because if this were not part of my own wound and my
Yeah.
own set of survival skills, it would not trigger me. I would sit there very peacefully. But there's something about the other person that's showing me something about myself, even if it's just my reaction to them. So I remember at a party recently, I had that experience and I sat with it and I was like noticing it in my body,
Yeah.
letting it flow through me. I can feel it right now just talking about it. I'm like, okay, it's in my solar plexus, it's in my throat. And, honoring, because so much of that early gaslighting and invalidation comes from not listening to the body, changing my inner dialogue to, instead of honoring and caring for and taking care of and protecting myself, it's just the sense of needing to be attached, right? Like Gabor Mate says, attachment over authenticity. So we all give up parts of ourselves as children to stay attached to others and we lose our authenticity. So in that moment at the party, I let it flow through my body. I noticed where it was. I stayed in the moment. I was trying not to distract myself. I was grateful for the opportunity to learn more about the shadows within. And
Uh-huh.
then at some point I said to myself, okay, that's enough learning for today. And I was like, I'm going to go grab some hummus. So, there's also a boundary that
Yeah.
I've learned to set for myself.
Yeah.
And so I won't just stay in a difficult situation anymore, but I can also be appreciative to the universe for giving me opportunities to do the work. And then also knowing when to set boundaries and say, thank you for teaching me. Here's a boundary. I'm going to take care of myself and protect myself. And sometimes that's sooner rather than later, right? There are
Yeah.
times in my life when something really triggering happens and I need to just go to self-care right away. And I'm not ready to process it and like move through the mirror and my shadow work. Like sometimes I just need to protect myself, go to the safe space where I am reminding my inner child that I will take care of her in ways that I didn't as a child. And then once I'm emotionally regulated and my nervous system is taken care of and I've gotten the support internal and externally that I've needed, then I can do the work and say, okay, what did I learn from that? How do I want to show up? What is this teaching me about myself? It's always coming back to the self because, like you said earlier, it's the patterns, right? So if it's not this person, it's going to be another person because it's never personal. It's
Yeah.
always just the universe throwing situations and people at us to show us ourselves. And sometimes it's showing us our light and it's reminding us of the love and the light and the beauty that we are. And sometimes it's showing us those, as you said, the monster, right? The beautiful monster within that we can love and accept. Because also once we learn to love and accept those parts of ourselves, we're more able to love and accept all of those parts of other people too. And then when we realize that we are all one consciousness and all of the parts that we judge in others, we are judging in ourselves because we are one.
Yeah. It's like I said, that's it. I mean, and you guys are listening to us. What Morgan just said, that whole thing is about the journey. It's digging deep. The fact that you're uncomfortable or something being triggered means that there is some work left And I remember some of the times I'd be triggered. I remember one time I was triggered. I'm standing there going, what in the world is going on? I thought I handled this many years ago. I thought this was finished. And the beautiful thing about the journey is that those onion layers, that particular situation that you went through, that you may have handled in, and I call it different vantage points. From one vantage point, you handled it. But from another vantage point, there's some additional information, if you will. And then it takes some time for that other vantage point to be brought to you via another individual. And then you start getting triggered, and then you figure out, wait a minute, I need to quiet myself and begin to walk myself. What is going on? And when you are in that position of the observer, I tell people that's when your journey begins. When you have that first encounter and you begin to question all the programs, that's the observer. And once you became that, you will continue to be that throughout the journey, constantly going in, observing, asking questions and making the adjustment. Because what are you doing when you're digging and so forth? The Bible gives us the principle. And you shall know the truth, and the truth is going to set you free. That's what you're looking for, the truth on that particular situation. And again, once you receive the truth and you're able to understand it and accept it, then it's no more a monster, if you will. It is something that you can love, something you can honor, something that you can respect, and all of those different things you can forgive from that space, because the truth is there to make you free and to allow you that freedom so that you can move from one space to the other. As you are going through your evolution, as they say, because I tell people what happens as we begin to go through our evolution, we start bringing in tools and all these different things, because what happens is that trauma is going to allow you and I to become a servant, but we have to personalize it, if you will. And as we begin to personalize it, we bring things and we try things. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. And then we are practicing on ourselves because we are our first client. And so we are now putting our personality to that servant walk, so that when we arrive to that process, we can now turn and serve. Talk to me about that process of yours. How did you develop your process? Recognize it first and then develop it. Talk to me about your first client outside of you, because I know you are your first, but your first client outside of you that you guinea pigged it on, girl, and to see the result. How did that work out?
Well, so after I finished my plant medicine facilitator training, which was almost a year training with psilocybin and going through a lot of ego dissolving experiences and learning to sit with others in their experiences. And I don't think that training gave me a lot of skills in the integration part of how to handle plant medicine experiences, because if we don't integrate what we learn in those moments, and plant medicine is not for everyone, I have to say.
Yeah.
But if someone does do that, the integration is, I think, the most important part. And so after I finished my training, I did a training and became certified as a spiritual coach. And as part of that certification, I had to do some practice coaching. And so I asked someone I knew, hey, do you mind if I just practice on you? And after our first session, she was like, I want to do this every week. She was my first client. It was really beautiful because I do believe, like you said, the trauma that we experience as children and adults really helps us become servants. And, I love the word universe because it's universe, like one song. And so we each have like our own song, which is part of the chorus of the song of the universe. And so I think that like my vibration, just like everyone has their own vibration, it's like I have my own song that I sing and I put out into the world. And so the people who are attracted to me and my song are people with similar experiences and self-limiting beliefs. So when I started working with this first client, so much of my own story and my own ego resonated with them. And being open and vulnerable and learning to really listen to what someone else is saying for like sometimes when we've done the work ourselves and we notice that someone is being triggered, we can say, "Oh, okay, I've done work on that sort of trigger. I know how to look at my judgments and notice within myself and tap into my body." Rather than judging them for their judgments or telling them they're wrong or they should do it differently. It's asking them to just learn about themselves, like
Yeah.
holding space for others to learn about themselves and say, I've been there, I've done this, and here are some tools that I have. And what does this feel like in your body? Does this remind you of a pattern? What if we journal about this? Here are some prompts, and it depends on the client, right? Some people
Hmm.
want to talk it out and they feel like as they speak, they figure it out. And other people go inward and they write things down or they meditate. So it really just depends on the client. But I do believe that the song that we put out into the world, our vibration attracts people who have similar wounds and are also looking for similar healing.
I absolutely believe that. Uh, I always tell people that your vibration will call those of the same vibration. And we talk about it.
Yes.
We mention it in terminology of mirror and so forth, different things. I'm engineer and sound and stuff like musician, and we didn't even get in touch, to talk about her art because I wanted to know when were you introduced to art, because being introduced to art, I think it opens up to one of the most powerful forces within the journey, and that is the imagination. When one is open to the imagination at a young age, that is one of the most powerful tools that you utilize as you are going through your journey. You're able to imagine, and because you're familiar with utilizing the imagination, you can pretty much pull things quickly and manifest things because you have been training for a long time. And artists and musicians and stuff like that are using that powerful tool that is called the imagination. And when you incorporate it into your day to help you manifest, I promise you it'll happen. It will happen, because when you do that, your cells in your body and your brain and all of that, it becomes true. Once it becomes true, being believes it, your body believes it, and you're good. I want to talk to you for a minute, Morgan, about this. You have a mic, and I want to bring you back because I want to go deeper into some of the things that we, that you mentioned, and I think we need a second podcast to do that because I have another one coming up in a minute, another interview, and I would love to dig deeper. But you have a mic. Let me ask you this question. You have a mic, and this mic is plugged into the 8 billion plus of us on this planet. What would you say to us?
Okay. Using that throat chakra, let's see. Everything is happening for us. And the beauty of the world can really be tapped into as we find the magic and the love in every little part of life. It's not the big things all the time. It's finding the ways that we are shown the beauty and the love and the divine essence in all things. Even if it's the person cutting you off in traffic, even if it's having to do the dishes or going through something really hard or just seeing a beautiful flower, everything is love and it's happening for us. If we can learn more about ourselves, we're more able to tap into that love and beauty.
Absolutely. I love your answer, if you will. And all of you guys that are listening to our conversation, we're going to provide all of Morgan stuff so you can get access. And you know how I feel about getting access. You get into our space and become a disciple. Disciples are the ones that change the world. Tell people, members and church members, people who are dabbling, doing that, they're a bunch of lazy people. Disciples ask questions. They are serious. There's a level. Those who have ears, let them hear. That means there's a responsibility to the hearer. And so the journey, I tell people, the journey is not for cowards. Some people tell me I'm harsh, but the truth is the truth. The journey is designed for those who have courage to face themselves. You have to face yourself. You are the biggest monster. Nobody else is the monster. Your mother, your grandmother, nobody. you, because the lie that you believe from them is resonating in you, and it stands before you all day long, and you are terrified to go in there. But you are afforded the journey, the opportunity to disconnect one day, that precious day when all of our world collides and fall apart. That's the day that you're given the opportunity to go in and see who you are and to sit down with that monster, if you will, but it's you. Sit down with you and face you and love that person. You have to have courage to do that. And I dare you guys that are listening to Morgan and buckle up and go in. Morgan, talk to them. It takes courage because it's messy and just messy. But you and I have to go in there and dig and go, my God, my God. But there's a little individual that's in there that needs you so much, and you have to dig all through that garbage. Find that little individual and hug them, embrace them, and tell them it's going to be okay. Talk to us a little, talk to the audience about that, because this is it, man, right there, Morgan, is about dealing with all of that to get to that little individual that is sitting amongst the mess, that is in pain, that is hurting, is crying, and a little muddy from all the garbage that we've been tossing on it. And, but it's waiting there. Talk to us about those. Let those that are listening, talk to them about how precious and important that digging is.
Yeah, there's a beauty to having the activation and the courage to dig in and love our shadows, right? Love the ego. The ego is so rejected, but it's really just all the survival skills that we were conditioned with and that we used with, with really no other choice as children. And so we developed these beautiful ways of protecting ourselves given our environment. And it's the unlearning and the re-loving of the true self that's within. And I keep having David R. Hawkins' map of consciousness come into my awareness because when we look at that, you said courage, right? You said you really have to have courage to dig. And I know for myself, at the very bottom of the map of consciousness, there's like stuckness, hopelessness, helplessness, apathy, and that's inaction. And then as you move up, you actually move through anger. And anger has like a higher consciousness level than the stuckness of helpless and hopelessness. So moving from freeze into past flight into fight, and then that anger is an instigator for the courage to make change. And then we can move into things like acceptance and all of the other beautiful experiences of higher consciousness, of that self-love and joy and beingness. But I think the survival skills that we learn as small children are down in those lower ranges, right? They're in the freeze, flight, fawn, and when we can move into the self-awareness and start getting into the activation and empowerment of all the parts of ourselves that we lost touch with, that small child that wants to be creative, the small inner self that wants to speak up and be seen and be heard, but who was quieted, and that was their survival skill, right? There are all of these ways that they say that the brain, when we're born, is like this full, it's like a full plant, like a full bush or shrub. And we prune it as we use certain parts of it, and then we don't use other parts. It's like we're pruning this beautiful whole plant that we're born with. And those pieces don't disappear, right? They're just like on the ground below our plant. And the reintegration is picking those pieces back up and grafting them back onto our branches and saying, I lost you years ago, but I'm going to reintegrate this part of myself back into my wholeness. And that's getting back in touch with that inner, true, whole self that was there all along. We just lost touch with it.
Guys, we're going to give you guys an opportunity to get in touch with her. We'll give you all the links and so forth so that you can access her. And Tap into her world so that you can change yours. Morgan, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a beautiful conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.